You are welcome to Africa Uncovered YouTube channel. My name is TJ, and today, like most of the weeks, we are going to discuss the case of Dr. Kiiza Besigye that has been, making rounds on TVs, as in all the media across the globe, by the way, but most notably in Uganda and on social media as well, where people have been, exchanging debates about his abduction, as people want to term it. We're not going to go so much into the details of what transpired, but to give you a recap, around 16th of November, while Dr. Kiiza Besigye was in Nairobi to attend a book launch by one of the prominent lawyers, Martha Karua, in Nairobi, he was, whisked from his hotel by security organs of Uganda and returned to the country. Well, before it made rounds on socials, his whereabouts were not known until when he was produced in court in Machinye Military Court. So later on, Besigye was produced in court where he was, held on accounts of possession of firearms, illegal possession of firearms, where it is being said that, or it was reported that he was found with two guns, two pistols in his hotel room in Nairobi. Well, there's so many things that have come up as a result of this. People questioning the jurisdiction of Uganda's security forces operating in Kenya and whether Kenya had a hand in this, which according to a personal opinion is that yes, that's true. Kenyan authorities, Kenyan government must have given Uganda security forces a go ahead to have their operation in Nairobi. There's definitely no way, shape, or form that they could have just run into the hotel without alerting the government. So it is in real sense that Kenya was in knowledge. However, after it raising dust, Kenya has been distancing itself, which is something that we expected to happen, because if such a scenario happens, you have more like a non-disclosure of some sort, saying if something happens, I will not be liable, but you can go ahead and have an operation. So I want to think that's what happened. So on Monday, Dr. Kiiza Besigye was lined in court and he was remanded back to Ruzira Maximum Prison. However, we saw Martha Karua, this prominent lawyer in Kenya, coming as the lead counsel or the lead lawyer of Dr. Kiiza Besigye. Now, this gotten to a mixed reaction from the people. First of all, we understand that previous cases that Besigye had always won were presided over by either Elias Lukwago or any other Ugandan lawyer. But this time around, the case is quite different. I don't know if it is the fact that he had gone to attend the book launch of Karua Martha, that's why she's acting as the lead lawyer in this case, or it is the magnitude of the case that we had to seek for international intervention. However, it is being reported also that over 50 lawyers, prominent pro bono lawyers from Africa, are being arranged to come and intervene in this case. Now, it raises questions. First of all, why is this happening at this moment? We all understand that for the years that Dr. Kiiza Besigye has been arrested on political basis, he has always won most of these cases, by the way. I don't remember a case that Dr. Kiiza Besigye lost. And the lawyers have always been Ugandan. So how come that this time around they're aligning lawyers from, I hear, Malawi, Kenya, Ethiopia, all over Africa to come and intervene? Does this mean the case is so huge that it needs an international intervention? Does it mean that actually he committed the cases? Because now there's another mistake that the wife of Dr. Kiiza Besigye has been making, which has been, she's a diplomat, she's someone who is learned, she's someone who really understands how the dynamics of how such cases run. But we've seen her appearing on TV stations in Kenya explaining things that, would at the same time implicate Dr. Kiiza Besigye, because she's had saying in one of the interviews that Dr. Kiiza Besigye was lured into whatever transpired. He was called into a room at where he was going to stay by this white man who appeared to have guns on the table, and at the moment he sat, the man disappeared, and then the security forces appeared. The security forces of Uganda that abducted him in courts appeared. Now you see all that story, works in tandem with what was heard in the voice notes, where he was requesting for assistance of ammunition in order to overrun or overthrow the government of President Yoweri Museveni. So if he says that he met this gentleman, a white gentleman, in a hotel room and they had guns and a lot of cash, it almost, sounds exact like what was transpiring in the voice notes that made rounds, where Dr. Kiiza Besigye was in meetings with whites planning on what to do to be able to overthrow the government. Now, that is not the major point why we're here. The reason we're here is to say what happens now that he's in the custody of the military, now that he's in prison in Uganda, Luzira maximum prison, where they put capital offenders, by the way, number one capital offenders. What happens? Now, I wanted to tell you that the fate of Dr. Kiiza Besigye is not anywhere else but in the hands of President Yoweri Museveni. Listen to me. President Yoweri Museveni is the one that constitutes the military court, the marching military court, or you can call it the court martial. So is the one who, appoints the chairman of this court and the rest of the team on it. So in one way or the other, this court can never be 100% independent. In one way or the other, it has to have at the back of their mind the interests of the front office, the interests of the president. So if you are tried in that court, the higher chances that you might probably not get, an equilibrium, an equal, you are not at the equal footing with whoever is accusing you. So that is something that Dr. Kiiza Besigye is apparently facing or is going to face. You are in a court in which the person that is seemingly, putting you in confines is controlling in one way or the other. Yes, it is independent. It sounds to be independent, but whether you like it or not, it has an influence. It listens to whoever constitutes it. So why do I say that his fate is in the hands of the president? Now, we know that Dr. Kiiza Besigye was a personal doctor of President Yoweri Museveni when they were in the bush. So whether you like it or not, Museveni still has a soft spot for Dr. Kiiza Besigye. He loves him. He has never talked, by the way, ill of this man. All the times that they have not been at the same page, all the times that they have been at loggerheads, he has never talked ill of Dr. Kiiza Besigye. And things seemed to move until recently when this case came up. But I still remain to say that he has a soft spot for him. So much as we're seeing the court proceedings, much as you're going to bring your so-called 50 lawyers across Africa, much as Europe is going to talk, the European Union and all that, the fate of the Dr. Kiiza Besigye lies in the State House. The fate of Dr. Kiiza Besigye lies in the hands of the president. Why? Because he is the one that constitutes this court and has control over it. At the end of the day, they have to uphold his interests. So what Dr. Kiiza Besigye has to do is basically to calm down and seek audience with the president, like the way we saw it with people that came before him and were almost doing the same thing that he does. You remember that he was trying to do, if it's basically true anyway. You remember the case of Kari Kaihura. It was almost the same. He was arrested, in prison for some time, given bail, but that was after reaching a consensus of some sort with the president. So the direction of this case that I'm seeing on an individual basis, this is a personal opinion, is that Dr. Kiiza Besigye has to swallow his pride and meet the president and they talk over this. I know they can solve it. Like I said, I know that the president has a soft spot for him and therefore there is no way they can fail to reach an agreement. But if he stays thinking he's strong, this case is too big to handle. A case that has something to do with the overthrow of a legitimate government, an elected government, is something that actually constitute death. There are reports that diplomats are in secret meetings over the case of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, and today we want to look at the Observer and see what they are talking about this. Okay. The Observer has reliably learned that the diplomats, especially from the European Union, have been holding meetings to forge a way forward for getting Besigye and his co-accused Obeid Lutale out of jail. Besigye and Lutale were abducted in Nairobi, blah, 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 back to Kampala before they were arraigned in court, in general court-martial 4 days later. Uganda law requires the state to produce a suspect in court not more than 48 hours after their arrest. They are accused of being found with 2 pistols and ammunition and seeking to buy weapons from foreigners in Geneva in Switzerland, Athens and Nairobi. And according to reliable sources within the diplomatic circles, the diplomats are concerned about the violation of international laws by Uganda and the decision to have Besigye tried in a military court. They have discussed ways to push for a solution between the government and the opposition, especially concerning dialogues, but they have not ruled out cutting aid or imposing sanctions on specific individuals involved in the abduction, arrest, and continued detention, the source said. Now, before we even go further, there are things sometimes that make me wonder about these so-called organizations like European Unions. Now, this is a matter that concerns Africa. This is a matter, first of all, that concerns Uganda, East Africa, Africa, before you think about the Europe. Now, why do you jump all these bodies to attract the attention of the European Union? What is your interest? We have East Africa, which has not raised eyebrows. We have Africa, African Union, who could intervene if the case maybe is escalating. Now, I don't see where anywhere it concerns the European Union, unless if they have interests that we're yet to understand as Ugandans. Are they behind the plan that probably Besigye has been trying to hatch? Why are they jumping into the soup? So I don't find sense in it. Two, this issue of you are supposed to produce a suspect in court in not more than 48 hours is for is for these petty cases, but a case that has to do with an overthrow of government overrides all these so-called laws that you're talking about. They can even fail to produce you for years. We've seen these things happen. So that should not be a case that they should benchmark on whoever is discussing this to get his freedom. And also, when you look at people that are involved in this, they don't carry the water to interface with the military court too. When you said that the military court doesn't have the jurisdictions to try Dr. Kiiza Besigye, you forget that once a soldier, or is a soldier. Dr. Kiiza Besigye, yes, is an ex-colonel, but someone who is on standby to be recalled back to front when needed at any point X. So you can't say they cannot try him too. The other thing is that the case that on which he is tried involved ammunitions that are used by the military. So you still are in the confines of being tried in a general court martial. So those are cases that don't stand. And if they go that direction, they are going to make Dr. Kiiza Besigye suffer further. And I want to believe, or I want to think, that he is not one behind raising these cases that are going to, lock him up further. So, like I have been discussing, a solution needs to be sought between the president himself and then Dr. Kiiza Besigye for something to happen. But if they involve, I hear, the European Union, I hear 50 lawyers across Africa, this is not going to help. There's nothing European Union is going to do if Museveni says he is going to stay in prison for 20 years. There's nothing they're going to do. You can no longer threaten Uganda with sanctions. It has been sanctioned. That's why it is, seeking for the Eastern alliances of BRICS. That's why they are now a designate member of BRICS, because they knew that at one point such cases of we're going to sanction you, we're going to cut aid are going to happen. So you cut aid from the US or UK, he gets aid from Russia or China or India or anywhere else. So that is also not a strong point to base on to, threaten the government to act otherwise. So let's continue a little bit with this article. Meanwhile, the diplomats are said to have discussed Uganda's political future ahead of 2026. Why don't they discuss their own? Why don't they discuss their own? They have an issue there's an issue of Joe Biden, making controversial decisions in the war to do with Russia and Ukraine. Why are they not discussing that? Why are they discussing a third world country, trying to deal with its matters in far areas? So I don't think it's their business. Diplomatic pressure is decisive. President Museveni only listens to donors. That's not the case anymore. They have propped his regime over the years. He can't ignore diplomats the way he ignores Ugandans. Oh, you think so? At least he has someone to turn to. It is important that the diplomatic community makes it clear to him that justice for Besigye and the civilians, you're not talking about justice because that's what they are doing. If it wasn't about justice, he wouldn't have been produced in the military court. He would have just disappeared. Actually, they are bringing more problems for this man, because the time of abduction of Dr. Kiiza Besigye, by the time they abducted him, whoever abducted him could have decided to kill him. Actually, we wouldn't have known. Or even if we knew, nothing would have happened. It would have just died a natural death. So the fact that they've been able to produce him in military court is a direction towards, trying to seek for, trying to, make sure that justice is served. Okay, but beyond justice, there's him interfacing his boss, because he's still his boss, to iron out things as individuals, or else whatever they are trying to say, I hear involving the European Union and doing that and bringing 50 lawyers, cannot do anything. It's not a solution to this case. It cannot swing whatever outcome is supposed to be. The only thing that can do that is a roundtable discussion that involves Dr. Kiiza Besigye, President Yoweri Museveni, probably Muhoozi Kainerugaba, and win Kiiza and win Byanyima. Those four people would be enough to resolve this matter, this case of Dr. Kiiza Besigye. That's what I thought we would discuss today on Africa Uncovered YouTube channel. My name is DJ. From me to you, adios tonight. Bye-bye.